And good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeffrey Tesch, CEO of RCN Capital, and welcome to our series with REI Inc. Today's informational webinar is going to be on technology. What products are available today to drive your business forward? Our series of webinars have really been able to drill down not only on the COVID implications to all of our investor partners, lender partners across the nation, but folks just starting to get into the business as well. And we have a tremendous panel today that we have the ability to really try and take technology and bring it to whether you're a small investor just getting started or a much larger property manager. So let's get right into it today. And first, welcome aboard Anas from Propertyware. Hello.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Anas, a little bit about yourself and your company, please.
Yeah, so my name is Anas Arabi. I'm the Senior Vice President for Single Family as well as General Manager for Propertyware, which is a comprehensive property management solution that scales to fit your business at every stage, handling streamlining crucial management tasks for maximum efficiencies. It's built by single family experts. It has been the leading property management platform for 20 years for single family, small multifamily, and maybe small mixed portfolio and within the rental businesses. It's also between Propertyware and its additional accounting, utility, and maintenance offerings, we really truly enable every PMC to develop their unique workflows and automate processes that grow doors, increase revenue per door, and customize the unique needs to drive higher NOIs.
Oh, fantastic. Really appreciate you being on the panel today. And next up, we have Trevor Hall, Director of Foreclosure and Auction Services with Altisource. Welcome aboard, Trevor.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here. So I'm working with hubzu.com. So we are a real estate auction platform. So I'm the Director of Foreclosure Auctions here, and what we have for our clients and our services are over 3,000 properties at any given time nationwide that we have in an auction setting. Personally, I have about 26 state licenses as an auctioneer. So not only working in the foreclosure space, but the bank-owned space. So we're happy to be here and work with different investors around the country to help source properties.
Oh, fantastic. A very timely topic. And next up, Benson Juarez, Head of Business Development with Privy. Welcome aboard, Benson.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate you having me here. I'm really excited to be part of the panel today. I'm one of the owners and Head of Business Development here at Privy, and I'm actually a licensed agent. And many years ago, we realized that there was no really efficient way of doing our business, in a scalable manner. So we designed a system that basically helps us automate all the tedious tasks of finding and analyzing deals. And for many years we didn't even sell it. We just used it in-house with our own investor clients. But we realized that there was a big need in the space to empower real estate investors with data and analytics to be able to analyze all of their deal flow, whether it comes from on or off market, from an agent, from a wholesaler. And so our platform now is available all across the country in many different states, and we're leveraging this data and analytics to identify investor activity so investors can make data-driven decisions. But our clients range from hard money lenders to real estate investors, agents, anybody that's in this space.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Benson. And next up, we have Damon Littlejohn, VP of Sales with CoreLogic. Hello, Damon.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, Damon Littlejohn with CoreLogic. A little bit about CoreLogic. We're a leading provider of global property information analytics and a solutions provider. As part of that is we deliver, value through our clients' unique data, analytics, our workflow technology, advisory, and managed services. We see a lot of our clients relying on us to help identify and manage growth opportunities, improve their performance, and also mitigate risk. So perfect timing with this. Some of the clients that we serve in our marketplace are automotive, capital markets, our consumer finance group. We have government, our insurance division, legal, mortgage, our multifamily, and then we get into our oil and gas, real estate, telecommunications, and utilities. So really our whole goal is to help people find, buy, and protect homes that they love.
Very good, Damon. Thank you so much. And finally, Andy Wallace with zInspector. Andy, a little bit about your company and yourself, please.
Hey, Jeff, thanks so much for having me here virtually today. We make property inspection and field management software. We've got about over 15,000 users in 10 different countries. And I started as a broker myself, and so I know the ins and outs of these pains, and just excited to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy. A really timely product, and I can't wait to hear more about it. So once again, my name is Jeffrey Tesch. I'm CEO of RCN Capital. A little bit about RCN. We are a nationwide lender in the private lending industry. We focus on investors from coast to coast. We're based out of Connecticut, just outside of New York City. We have about 100 employees, and we're a family company, and we started in 2010 really focusing on folks buying distressed assets, fixing them and selling them for a profit. And then as time went on, we've added to our product mix, not only from the commercial nature, but also long-term rentals, as more and more single-family assets around the United States are being aggregated for long-term rentals. So we still handle the bridge product, doing short-term buy, fix, and sell, long-term rental, aggregation, single asset, as well as portfolio product, and then multifamily from a rehab perspective, as well as longer-term debt across the United States. Really proud of what we've been able to build over the past 10 years. And a big thank you to REI Inc. Susan and Robert really saw a need in these uncharted waters, putting together each week a panel. And every week we tried to really do a little bit of a different thought process. And this week we've made our way to technology. And I must tell you, as a nationwide lender, technology has played a huge role not only for our customers across the United States, but certainly the end users, as well as all of the property managers across the U.S. So really excited to get into each expertise today. What we've tried to do is we've really divided things up so that there's not too much overlap amongst our panelists. Each of our panelists today are experts in their own area, and we're going to get right into it. And first, we're going to start right off on us. You know, Propertyware, you folks, I'll tell you, you've been the go-to from a software perspective, but, I would love you to drill down a little bit so that, the property managers on the calls today, can you just really get into how your product helps them, certainly pre-COVID-19 and certainly post-COVID-19? How is Propertyware making a difference?
Yeah, so Jeff, thank you for that question. So Propertyware, first and foremost, it's a cloud-based property management system. And this is quite important, especially now under COVID, because most people are working remotely and they need to have ability to access their platform, their technology from different point of views, different point of access, but still work off the same database. So what that means, whether it's the property manager, their employees, their virtual assistants, or even their vendor that they're communicating with their systems, are all logging into the same database from a remote location via web browser and an internet access, and they're working through that technology in that system. And that's really important to mention. Additionally, it's a full property management platform, so it does give you all the aspects of the marketing, the accounting, even some of the inspection tools that we have and the property maintenance, as well as add-ons that we feel they're wonderful for people at the right times, like additional accounting functionality through our real page accounting, utility management through our simple bills, and even maintenance offering through our Propertyware Maintenance Plus. And the whole idea here is to be able to provide a scalable solution that works for almost every size of PMC, but scales with you as you grow bigger and gives you the ability to customize your workflow and your processes. The easiest way to describe this, Propertyware, it's simply the Salesforce of property management softwares, because it really allows you to be able to customize and drill down and set up whichever way you'd want it to set up your layers. You still will get the bare functionality of, you know, collection of rents and booking those rents accurately and correctly, but it gives you some really awesome tools to save time and allow you to grow. If you want some specifics, I can give you a couple of them. We've just rolled out a new listing widget that allows people to list all their properties from one click of a button. I'll talk about that a little bit more on the call. And then we also just finalized our tenant application portal, which is a very unique experience. I have not seen this in the single family before, the way we designed it. It really gives the ability for PMCs to work with prospects from the beginning of seeing a property all the way until you sign a lease without seeing them, without touching them, without being in the same room with them. So really wonderful for practicing social distancing nowadays.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds like as the company has evolved, it's a never-ending process in adding different modules that are going to help certainly the investor or the property manager. And, you know, oftentimes on these calls, we have a lot of new investors who are just getting into the space, Anas. And, you know, I would love for you to just sort of dive into a minute, you know, what you see from the investor who's working off of Excel spreadsheets and is ready to take that next step to a software solution such as Propertyware, and how the systems can really allow that new investor who's just beginning to aggregate really be able to scale up their operation. Could you speak about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start off by saying a phrase that it's very important, which is a single point of truth, right? When you, and I was an investor myself, and I ran a property management company before, so I can speak to this. When you have multiple different systems that each of those systems do or does one thing for you, you start losing the single point of truth of where your information is really truthful. And a property management software allows you to become that single point of truth. And what that means, all your information, properties, your tenants, your owners, your money collected, your reports, your anything that is happening within the realm of monthly cycle for that rent is all happening within your property management software, and you have access to all of it in one system. So I'll give you an example. Communication is a huge key thing in today's world, especially with practicing social distancing. You could very easily use your phone to communicate with clients, prospects, owners, whatever you want to call it, or you can use your property management software to do that. The differences would be if you ever need to have access to that information or communication, since it's already in your property management software, everyone who's a user on that software has the ability to be able to see that with the right permission. If it's on your phone, it's only going to be accessible to you unless you forward it on to everyone on your list, and that becomes a little bit difficult to do. So things like text messaging functionality that we have in Propertyware would be the same thing as your text messages in your phone, but it's all housed within the program, within the platform, that gives you the ability to have access to it from all different points of view. Additionally, it also helps you and supports you to produce reports and standardized services. So what I mean by that is when you are offering services to your tenants or to your owners, you're offering the same service across all different types of tenants, across all different types of owners. And you're keeping it all in one system. And then last but not least, with the fact that you want it to grow, it gives you the ability to scale with you, because if you set things up in the right way from the beginning, whether you have 10 houses, one house, or hundreds or thousands, you still will be able to plug and play because you already have created that foundational layer of all of the pieces that you want to happen and want to work for you. We've had customers that they came to us with less than 50 units, and now they are over 2,000 units on our platform. We have customers with much more larger operations with thousands of homes across multiple different locations. it's really all about how you'd want to use it and the ability to take the time to use that single point of truth and the processes that are available in the system. Was that where you were?
Well, it seems to.
For...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Anas.
No, I was just asking if that's what you were looking for, Jeff, or if you want me to dive into any of those specifics.
No, you really hit the nail on the head there. You know, as an investor, and certainly, you know, we see it here at RCN Capital, which is we have a lot of new investors that come on board, and they've had great success. They buy right, they manage, but then they get to a stage where they want to begin really making property management as their primary, income source. And if they don't take that next step with a software solution like Propertyware, that we find them really behind the eight ball. Managing these businesses off of Excel spreadsheets, while it's fine when you have just a few, it is not scalable. So I really appreciate you drilling down on that. And certainly when we're talking about scaling and building out your business and how you're going to acquire those assets, Benson, I'm going to turn to you because certainly Privy has done a great job in being able to drill down on data. And maybe you could share with our listeners today about how your software solution is helping investors build out their own portfolios.
Yeah, of course. So, what's interesting about that, Jeff, is that, for a long time, investors kind of just really operated in the shadows and they weren't given access to the proper tools and the proper data. And, as much as investors are, notorious for having the skills to kind of overcome and adapt and hack situations, it's also sometimes their worst enemy. And so they end up going to places like the Z websites to get comparable data or leveraging their real estate agent and just kind of creating a situation where they're always at a disadvantage. And so we saw that early on that, the investors really need to be more empowered with data and analytics to be able to find these properties and properly analyze them in a way that they understand. And so even though we've got fantastic data is only as good as you can present it. And so we've really turned our system into an amazing platform with great user interfaces and its usability and the ability to share and collaborate, but it's all actionable. And we curate the data in a way where they can see information about a property that maybe we found for them that has, amazing margins, but they can analyze any property. And so, for people who are looking for investor properties they want to acquire and turn into a rental, they always say you make money when you buy, right? If you buy it right, you're way ahead of the curve. And for people who are looking for properties like with Trevor on Hubzu, the foreclosure properties, these how do you determine what it's worth? How can you determine what it's worth after it's fixed up? And so with the data and analytics, they're able to quickly determine what it's worth in its current condition, what it's worth after it's fixed up, using our comping algorithms. The leverage is what appraisers and agents have been doing for years. And that's even with us having the data. We could still spend a lot of time trying to analyze these properties, but with comping algorithms now, they can analyze hundreds of properties in seconds. And it really gives them an edge to be able to scale their business, but also understand, especially right now with uncertain economic times, should I even be buying? What kind of data is out there that helps me understand if my market is the right place to invest, or if I should be looking at other markets? Where are the hot areas at? One of the cool things we have is what's called investor activity. So I can run a search on our platform and say, show me every market in the US where people are buying properties and selling them at 60% more or 60% of ARV. And our system flashes and we show you the hotspots all across the country. And then you can dial in and drill down on a specific area and see all of the individual properties that comprise that hot area with what they bought it for, what they sold it for, their gross margins, timelines, before and after photos. So it really gives them all the data they need to make data-driven decisions.
Interesting. So when you say hot spots, kind of like what's the behind the curtain on that? How do you determine what the hot spot is and why investors should be focusing their attention there?
Yeah, so The hotspot really is a match on whatever search it is they just created. But what we teach our users is that you shouldn't invest based off of convenience, what's familiar, where you grew up, where your mom lives. People think that gives them an edge because it's familiar and it gives them some sort of confidence. But in reality, it's a failed approach. What they should really be doing is investing based off of investor activity. And as much as investors would love to avoid competition, it's actually really difficult to do in this business because it's a comparable driven business. So you have to be where your competition is because those are your comps. And so if you're going to prove ARV, and at the end of the day, there's always going to be an appraisal, right? And that appraiser is going to be looking for fix and flip comparables so that you can prove your ARV. And if you're in an area based off of convenience and there's not a whole lot of investor activity there yet, you're going to be really limited on how much money you can make on that property on the back end because no one's done it yet. So when we show you the hot areas, we're showing you a heat map of where those fix and flip comparables are located. And the investor can put together a strategy with their team to target those areas, whether it's marketing campaigns or working with their agent or working with their team to find properties where they can maximize the ARV because they have plenty of data to prove what it's worth.
No, I think that's really well said, especially the statement regarding just because it's familiar, that is oftentimes a failed approach. We see it here at RCN over and over again. The majority of our successful investors that are borrowing from us are investors that are just only too keen to go outside of their comfort zone to be able to find the return on investment that is no longer or maybe never was available in their own local marketplace, especially our investor base in California. We see it over and over again, which, the return on equity in California is so low. The investors are constantly searching outside of their own geographic area. And, you mentioned it a couple of times, which is investor activity, right? Just really drill down on that so our audience today understands exactly what you're trying to say there.
Yeah, so in the past, you would know your local market based off of kind of the networking. Maybe you go to the local RIA and somebody there talks about a hot area, or you're driving down the street and you see a roll off in a driveway, and that's what investor activity was to you. But now, because we have not just some of the most up-to-date data that's available based off of our MLS agreements across the country, we also have historical. And so we can go back many years and we compare up transactions from when it was originally listed to when it was sold, partner those up automatically using our algorithms, and then show investors what happened through that process. And you talked about before, Jeff, how there's a lot of newer people out there. And we've always believed there's a big chasm between the theoretical business of real estate investing, the books and the podcasts and the gurus, and the nuts and bolts of getting a deal done. What lives in the middle there is what's happening on the ground. What are people buying properties for? What are they selling them for? What's the before and after pictures, timelines? That is a big piece of where education falls off, where a lot of investors eventually end up failing and getting sucked into that black hole because they don't have the data on the ground that teaches them how to have success in a local market. So investor activity is that gap filler.
I love it. And I can't encourage our audience enough, where data meets boots on the ground, this is how we're finding that our customer base is successful. So really well said. And, this dovetails perfectly into what you're doing, Trevor, which is, at Hubzu, you've certainly been one of the largest players in the space, regarding the auction style format and whatnot. And I would love to hear a little bit more about Hubzu is stepping up their game, not only from an asset standpoint, but technology. I would love to hear more what's going on there.
Yes, I think technology is definitely at the forefront of everything we're doing. And it helps when you're an online real estate platform for auctions, you're always into technology. So looking at what you can enhance, what you can change, what you can bring to the market. And I would tell you that dealing with a lot of investors, I actually talk with them on a daily basis and work with them on what it ends up being the pain points and what it is to be in that market and trying to find properties, source them, do the evaluation. I think Benson had some great points about the data and analytics, because that plays a huge role. And when it comes to the different properties and platforms, there's a lot of similarities, but the goal is at any given time, we're working to try to look at the different products that are out there in this space. And so you got the foreclosure space, you've got these REOs and bank-owned properties, and even short sales. And then you have the non-distressed. I mean, there's distressed and non-distressed. So you're going to have the banks that are going to be out there, and then you have just the Mr. and Mrs. Smith trying to sell their house or buy a house. So you always got to play into those different categories. So like on a foreclosure front, technology in this space has been needed for 100 years. It's an old, antiquated system, and I'm happy to see that as we're working through the marketing aspect of it, what we're trying to do is take these foreclosures that used to be very unknown. They had to be posted in certain areas. You had to read the newspaper. And what we're trying to do is work with our clients to get them out there to the world, to syndicate them, put it up there, to let people know the who, what, when, where, and how. Because that ends up helping to where, you miss those missed opportunities where you were thinking it had to be one day or at this time, this location. And in certain states, the technology is coming in force where people are realizing maybe it needs to go away from in person and let's do this online. So states like Florida and Ohio, they're moving into a online space for what used to be the in-person setting. So that's going to be, I think, a game changer. And we're launching Ohio as a foreclosure space with the private selling officers. You're seeing that states themselves are changing laws to try to make it in statutes to make that a possibility. And with that kind of becomes, what can we use technology that we have in our fingertips now? And I think somebody mentioned text messages earlier. Those, we live by our phones. We live by notifications from apps or text messages, and especially where you have to show up at some place or be something, even in the states that aren't there yet. We are starting to do text message alerts to let people know if the sale's been canceled or postponed. Save your time and energy. It's been cleared. Show up. Make sure you're there. It's ready to rock and roll. And then working through different technology that can make it to where what I see in the next 4 or 5 years, proxy bidding, where you don't have to be there. Maybe technology, even if the state statute isn't there, technology can help you participate in an auction in a different county so we can expand. And there's those different areas like, say, Dallas, for instance. Dallas County, you have Collin County, Tarrant County, and Denton County. They're all within a 25, 30-minute drive, but you can't necessarily always be at, if you got 4 properties in each of those counties, you can't do it. So we're working to try to get proxy bidding up to where people can be in one area and bid in another. And so I see that kind of in the foreclosure space, helping give us the next boost. For REOs and bank-owned properties, technology not only in the notification, but the transparency where you can see what you're going against, what the current offer is, and then adding a visibility standpoint to it. I've seen the introduction of drones as a technology piece in this field where you have occupied properties where technically you can't sometimes, there people are buying properties that are really good at doing evictions. You can't step foot on the property or disturb the tenant. What we're seeing now, we're deploying a lot more drone photography to try to give people that view of the roof, the backyard, the side. What are you looking at? Again, doing that due diligence up front will help make that better decision on the valuation. If that roof is in pretty poor condition where you can't see it in the back, if you pull the trigger without checking it out, this kind of gives you a little bit of heads up there. So looking at trying to utilize more of the video technology, I think that's going to be in our future, is the virtual walkthroughs in places where people can see these properties without actually being there. And what we're seeing is, we've got nationwide property available. So, no matter what state you're in, there's probably nearby. But people are purchasing now further and further away because they can get more details, more information. They can get contractors, and things are becoming virtual where investors are moving away from that 50-mile radius and they are buying in other states. So hopefully that, plus then moving into remote closings and e-notaries, looking to where, again, using technology like the DocuSign we've seen come up over the last 5-10 years, that kind of will be a game changer where ultimately my goal is you're sitting on a beach with an iPad and you buy a property, and you close, you sign, you bid, you review it, you look at all your data and graphs, and everything's controlled with an iPad.
Yeah, it certainly goes right back to what we were talking about with Benson and data points and data analytics and being able to find that, you know, the geographic regions that make sense from a cash on cash return. That at the end of the day is super important. And, you know, a little bit off the technology, you know, sort of theme here, I would love to know what Hubzu is seeing from a listing perspective. In other words, certainly we often as investors think of auction sites as REO or bank owned, but you know, how has the breadth of products being offered by your individual sellers changed over the years? What are you seeing at Hubzu on that?
We're seeing a wide range. Obviously, an increase of usage by some of our institutional sellers. We've also introduced kind of a signature seller program, which does allow the individual investor to kind of get in the game. So it's not just the world of big mortgage companies and banks in this space. We're trying to make it easy for investors to get in. Say they have a portfolio of 100 properties, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to put so many in the normal MLS setting, but then I'm going to go a couple for auction. So we've allowed that to a platform and a program to where they can easily load up a property and participate and take advantage of the same marketing that we're doing, the same syndication, SEO, SEM, so that they're kind of participating in it. And so we're working through that. The products have always, you know, been evolving. So it definitely, you know, has different the ebb and flow of delinquency. But again, I'm a big proponent of when you can start getting the non-delinquent properties, those, you know, investor held. We've got some that are rented out with leases. We've got people that are, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith that just, you know, they're trying something new and different. And auction does give that opportunity, right? You kind of expand your local marketing. You're going nationwide. You're getting a competitive, you know, atmosphere where people are jumping in, and that kind of helps take it to the next level. And I see it being something that continues to evolve. I mean, it's online auctions have been around for a little bit, but they are constantly evolving, and we're seeing utilization in different ways and how people are treating it. But it's coming like that little virtual buying. It's never going to take over the market. It just fits in a certain niche, and that's what we like to be able to be the expert in.
Sure. No, that's super interesting. And as I've mentioned, you know, we have a lot of individual investors who, you know, don't have huge scale portfolios yet. Certainly they're looking for that way. They're buying, they're selling. And I don't know that many of them have thought about the auction model before. You know, maybe you just give a quick pitch as to why auction would be a good solution instead of just throwing it on the MLS. I would love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, there's several ways of doing it. I like to consider it, especially for the investors, it's an MLS plus. So for the most part, it's the best marketing starts with getting the agent involved when you're putting on MLS. We're just adding on to it. But the goal is it's a quick and the process is very time sensitive, right? So we're trying to get it on in a certain time frame to get it sold and closed as quickly as possible. So the goal is not to be on the market for 30, 60, 90 days. It's a short amount of time and a short amount and the way we wrap it up, it's an as is, where is. So we're trying to eliminate the whole back and forth. It's quick, simple, easy. You tell us if you want cash or you want financing. What are you considering? We're not going to be doing the back and forth on inspection periods and results. You're just going to do hey, this is the way this property is. If you don't like the windows are old, adjust your bid. If you don't like the way the roof is, adjust your bid. We're not going to be doing this, you know, get up to a certain price and then start negotiating backwards. The goal that we're trying to do for our sellers is maximize the results and close it quickly. So if you put that reserve in there at $150,000, our goal is to get it to that or greater. In certain markets, you've done that fix, you're ready to flip it, and it's looking pretty nice, and you're going to get an offer day one. That's sometimes in certain markets, throw it in auction, let people duke it out. And when you get people competing against it, they get to see exactly what that price is, and they can just go, you know what's an extra $1,000? I'm going to go after it. And at the end of the day, the buyer goes, the one that really wants it the most, they're going to go and pay, and they're not going to feel left out if you accepted, one of three offers at 150. You know what? How about if we get you 155 instead, and let that person who's super interested in it. And so so it's everything we're doing, but we're adding to that too. So we're going to take that property, we're going to throw it in, we're going to do email campaigns, we're going to get it out there to the world in syndication through ads, through Facebook Messenger, through Facebook social media, LinkedIn, every platform. So we're going to take that and just take the marketing to the next level. And so I think that's where you're going to see the competitive analysis of bringing different buyers in, and some people that may have missed it. And if you could bring an extra buyer or bidder into that mix, you're going to end up with a better closing percentage and a higher price at the end of the day. So that's what we try to do.
Sure, love it. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And, I love these webinars for, having our investor community out there start to think outside the box. And that's certainly one area that I'm sure a lot of our folks today can start to think about another way. And, Damon, I'm going to turn to you now. CoreLogic, boy, holy smokes. We've used your company at RCN Capital for years from a data perspective. And, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how your company is really empowering the real estate investment community across the country from a data perspective, and what your company is doing to help the investor community step up their game.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think, one of the key things to remember as we start to talk about data, and I think with what Benson and Trevor had to say, a lot of that is based around data. If you go back to where we have been and where we are today, we've got over 50 plus years of accumulated data, and that data is either from public, contributory, or even some of our proprietary sources. So what we do with that data is obviously we take a look at the data, we cure that, we obviously have our special secret sauce that we put into that, and looking at it from a county perspective and being able to really identify when you talk about locations or you're talking about property characteristics, we start looking at portfolio risk. And when you talk, especially in today's times on the portfolio risk solutions that we have, is we're able to say a little bit more about the property. You look at from an insurance perspective, from a funding perspective, from a risk perspective, we can tell you a little bit about that property from 50 plus years. So if you're in a particular neighborhood, and you want to know more about the property or know more about it. I think the other key component there is, as we talk about this, and specific to what we're talking about today, is location and understanding really what is around that location. And what we've been able to do with our spatial data, and specifically looking at data around what is in a particular area, saying, if there's schools, if there's, how far is it to grocery store to walk, what is the crime rate, what is, you start looking at different data assets inside of that, taking some of our MLS data that we have and the partnerships that we have with the MLS boards, being able to put all of that together to really create a real data and analytics platform that we have. And one of the things I like to say too is, as we talk about data, we, being the first source of data, and I think Anas had said that earlier, is that, really having that source of data that we can, and when we start looking at how our data is used, it is used across from a marketing perspective, from, as we've talked about, risk, but just being able to take all that data. And I think, a key couple of things that we have today is we have our, what we would call our property analytics. And when we talk about that, is we can tell you who the owner of the home is, when they purchased it, what type of loan, going all the way down when they bought it, and even who the previous owners were and the property characteristics that are specific to that. So I think as this continues to grow, whether you're in the looking for a property or you're in the process of saying, okay, what do I have? What does it look like? Putting AVMs, and I think that's a key component, is we do use our own data to build out our AVMs and really, really build out, top quality AVMs that are used in the lending arena as well. Part of that, too, Jeff, that goes into that is just being able to give data points and not, be able to have that uploaded by our clients. If they're on a specific system, whatever particular LOS, if they're an origination system, whatever that may be, making it flexible enough that we can do that for them.
And see, for us at RCN Capital, we've used CoreLogic data for years. And, one of the things that we've always prided ourselves on is, as we underwrite each specific investment, we are underwriting it from the standpoint is our investment in this customer going to return them a profit that is acceptable? And we use that CoreLogic data, to your point, especially for geographic reasons, to really drill down and make sure that the data that we're seeing, not only from the appraisal, but any of our backup valuation methods, is going to return the customer what they expect when that property hits the marketplace post renovation. And maybe you could just talk a little bit about how CoreLogic empowers the investor to be able to understand, drilling down in your specific geographic region, and how it just makes so much sense, instead of just by flying by the seat of your pants, whether it be using BPOs or even if you do get an appraisal, why that data just isn't enough.
Yeah, I think that, again, one of the business lines we do have our, what we call our CoreLogic valuation services. So we have, provide a full appraisal. And again, we have that historical data that we go back. But I think it's key to really understand, along with the appraisal, is understand a little bit of a history about the house and about the area when you start looking at location from an investment perspective. If you look at certain areas that may be on the uptick, is understanding, and I think Benson said this, is what does that look like from, comparables? What is the highest, what is the lowest, what can we learn from that? And I think also is, some of the services that we offer from a, thought basis from our chief economist, Dr. Notaf, is really, what does the home price index say? What is it going to do? What do we think the home price index is? At the same time, understanding what is, some of the values of the home and how much have they gone up over a period of time, or what is the loan to value? Is there some opportunity there too when you start looking at it from an AVM perspective? So combining all those, Jeff, into one, and being able to take that one holistic look at the property level data, and again, catering to the need of the client is I think something that really can hone in on that, and not taking just one source but multiple.
Yeah, it's really well said. And, once again, this is transitioning well into Andy. And, Andy, you'll be happy to know that, from an asset standpoint, we've had several panels. Some of those panels up until this point have involved direct property managers, and zInspector has come up on almost every single panel that we've had since the pandemic began. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about how your solution helps the property managers out there, but not only, thinking from the post-COVID era, but I would love to know, kind of pre-COVID, how, property managers were embracing technology through your system. Andy.
Yeah, sure. And, it actually started, it was about 20 years ago. I was a, VP of engineering for a company, and kind of started dating a girl who was in real estate. And now 20 years later, she's my wife. So we started buying properties, started a little side property management company. And then we ended up, having to turn 100 homes in 2 days, like in a college town. And there was just, and as a technologist, that was my problem. Like, how do I solve that problem? So from there, we really kind of spun this out, to a company, and we've had now customers since 2014. And the idea is, we'll do things like, we have, a lot of Propertyware customers, and, they'll know from Propertyware, we'll get, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, lease start dates, tenant names. We can sync all that data. But now we're going to take that database at a whole nother level. And the software is designed to kind of get smarter as you go. So as inspections are being done, it gets smarter. And so you'll know, like, this kitchen, has a dishwasher or not at a property, or this bathroom has an exhaust fan or not, right? So that's really the whole thing, is getting things down in the database at that level and making it faster and easier and more reliable for the people to actually do inspections. So, that's really where we started from, is how to have a good move-in, move-out inspection process, and, have all that data available and make it faster as you go, like, down the future on an operational side. And so then, as we started taking on more and more customers, we learned a lot. It's like, I thought everyone did move-in inspections the same way. Well, no, they don't. There's a different process all over. And so what we're trying to do is solve every single one of these workflow and process issues from a inspection and field management point of view. So some of the ones that we were kind of adding anyways is a lot of people, like when tenants do a move-in, some property managers were maybe doing the move-in inspection before a tenant comes in, and then they want the tenant to remotely sign it. And sometimes they'll do that as part of the key process. Other times they'll do it as part of the lease process, or other times the tenant needs to actually do the move-in inspections themselves. And part of that may be driven by your state rules and so forth. So there's all these different little nuances depending on what market you're in and how you're managing your properties, the types of properties. And so we've had a big push in the last year to really solve every single one of those workflows. And it was really just to make it easier for the property manager. So that came along with, adding in remote signatures and then adding in tenants to do their own inspections. And so that, I think long-term, this is more about just workflow and process and optimizations, but it's coming down right now where, our customers are like thinking, oh, thank goodness I had this in place. I was first just trying to save myself a little time. But now, I really don't have a choice. I have to figure out these types of, contactless processes.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly is the buzzword. It's amazing to me, no matter what industry that you are in today, the contactless everything is the buzzword, no matter what. I was watching TV last night, and I forget which national vendor it was, but they were told me that, it's a contactless pizza from the, time they make the pizza to the time I get it. And I'm not quite sure how that works, but, they're using the buzzword to drive attention to themselves. And, certainly in your business, which should certainly benefit from the technology, I'm wondering how implementing this contactless inspection, how do you trust the tenant to gather the information? How do you guarantee that the tenants, perform these inspections and before, are they reliable? I'd love to know how you've thought that through, Andy.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's definitely the one that we get asked the most from people. It's just kind of a concern. I think, part of it is you're coming from, like, let's say a move-out inspection, world, and where you're doing all this work and to protect yourselves from these, a few people that really cause a lot of damages. So we do have to, be careful sometimes in real estate management and dealing with tenants that, sometimes you have a process that is designed for the complete worst case. And that may not necessarily be what we want to do, especially from a tenant renewal inspection. We're seeing thousands of tenants complete these a week right now. And, and I think the data that I collected on from my own, business is that we were returning typically 80–90% of security deposits, right? And I use as an example is that the reality is 80–90%, it's going to vary by market of things, and are good, conscientious people who try hard. And I think what you're going to find right now is tenants are really gravitating to these things for like a renewal inspection because they don't want you there either, right? So the last thing they want is a property manager who's walking through, every 30 minutes through a different property all day long, right? That's not what they want. And I think it even could, open up the property manager to some liability point of view if you've got to do, these inspections that are, that are occupied. And so what we do is our software, we started from the very basics of, well, one, I want to end up with a printable report, even though you should almost never print it, but the idea is you still may need to go to court and things like that. And it has on it time stamping, GPS stamping, user stamping, and all those things are permanently locked. So as opposed to like just a timestamp when you take a photo on your camera phone. That's an editable parameter, right? Well, all that information is non-editable on our reports. And so so the idea is really to have that from a kind of legal documentation point of view. But then the key is that the property manager, we give you all the default forms, but you can customize it to be whatever you want it. So let's say on a renewal inspection, like our default is going to first ask the tenant, do you want to renew your lease? And it gives them a series of options like, yes, I'm interested in renewing, or no, I'm not interested, or whatever that may be. And then it says, hey, verify the smoke detectors, right? Take a picture of your HVAC filter. When is the last time you replaced your filter? Take a picture of your refrigerator open and closed. Take a picture of your oven open and closed. Those types of things. And I think, when we actually came up with this, we weren't sure how tenants would actually do that. But we weren't quite sure, but I think we've been working with tenants and seeing example reports. And I think you're finding the majority of tenants, not all, but the majority, they are doing a very thorough job because they don't want you there. And I think that's an important aspect to keep in mind, is that this is really, as much as something as for the property manager, I think tenants are perceiving it as a service for them, because they're saying, thank goodness I want to do a renewal, and I'm going to get you, the property manager, this info, and I'm not going to necessarily have you walking through my house.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, without a doubt. And I think, with the time stamping, and certainly from the GPS technology, that's going to go a long way to giving the property managers, really sense of security on what's happening. And congratulations on that. And I think this is a great point. And of course, time always flies by faster than we'd like. But, I'd like to go back, and I'm going to try and get through everybody. If you could just spend, a minute or two, talking about COVID-19 and what you see changing. And I'll try and frame the question as best I can. Trevor, let's start with you. In-person auctions have always been a huge part of RCN's capital buyer base out there. They go to the auction, they pick up a great deal. How do you think things are going to change? Is it going to be online? Is there going to be a hybrid between online and in person? Trevor, what do you think? COVID-19, how's it going to change?
I think it's going to make a huge impact, especially in those Super Tuesday states, Texas and Georgia, where at one point in Dallas County, you'd have like 400 people in one tiny spot. Fulton County in Georgia. I mean, you're going to see that stuff potentially change. I think every county and state legislator is going to be reviewing how the process and procedures would go. So I think you're going to see a hybrid model, or one that kind of pushes it more to online. And this could be the wake-up call the foreclosure world has needed for a while, is how to make it to where you're not going to be standing in a large group within, and trust me, I've seen some of those auction sales. You don't have much personal space. There's no 12-inch rule. You're shoulder to shoulder. So I think that each of these states are going to be scrambling to figure out ways to doing it. And as they move forward, we'll see some changes before, probably 2021 for sure.
Yeah, well put. And, Benson, I'm going to put the same to you, which, it's right now it is extremely difficult for our customer base that, we service from the lending capacity to find these deals through usual channels. How do you think, your software solution and the virtuality of things, what do you see happening, Benson?
Well, there's a group of investors that are definitely in a holding pattern, that are kind of just waiting to see how things play out. The savvy investors who maybe have a little bit higher risk tolerance are actually leveraging our data to buy more. They're seeing opportunities out there. And what's cool about it is, with the automation that we have built in the system, they can basically set the system up to go out and find these deals automatically. Our comping algorithms will analyze their deal flow actively, but also passively behind the scenes. It will go out and find deeply discounted deals that they can write offers on every single day. And it's people who are doing it virtually, from maybe one side of the city to another, or one side of the country to another. We've got users in Canada and Israel and the Middle East who are buying properties here virtually from all over the world, and they're not even having to see the property. So I think that's going to become a bigger part of a lot of people's business model, and it's more of like a forcing factor than people would typically consider. But a lot of our users are having a lot of success finding, analyzing, and buying properties using our software.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this, folks, who are in attendance today, I want you to understand this was a trend before COVID-19, but there is no doubt that this trend is only going to accelerate now. And us, from Propertyware's perspective, how is COVID-19 changing how property managers are using your technology and being able to really leverage Propertyware solutions from a COVID-19 perspective?
Yeah, so thank you, Jeff. I have a couple of comments from earlier. I think just like Andy from zInspector, we've seen a huge increase in utilizing technologies such as inspections, such as virtual tours, virtual assistants, even the ability to do self-service showings have increased quite drastically in the past 4 weeks. And the beauty about that is, just like he mentioned, our software does allow you and support you to be able to do all of those things. I think I've mentioned it to you earlier. With our technology, you can typically list a property, get an applicant on it, screen them, and write a lease, get it signed, and even move them in with the inspection without actually physically seeing them or touching them or being in the same room with them. In addition to that, I would also say there are some great utilizations of data similar to what Damien was saying. We've rolled out our new artificial intelligence for tenant screening recently in March, and the idea behind that is it's utilizing the massive amount of data that RealPage has from a tenant base as well as from rentability base, and we're able to tell today whether somebody has the aptitude to pay the rent when they become a tenant. And that becomes increasingly important for the future, because obviously under COVID-19, a lot of people may have lost their jobs, they may have some issues not being able to pay the rents for the future, and you really want to make sure that you're screening people to the nth degree, that you're giving your investors and your investment the most ability to get paid on them from a rent perspective. And last but not least, what I would also mention, what we've seen recently from our property managers is the utilizations for almost all tools available to make sure that they produce the results that they would want, but also minimize being in physicalities with the tenants or even with the owners. Anywhere from, I would say, like looking at maintenance and utilizing a method to figure out what's essential, what's not, and only work on essential stuff and hold off on the non-essential, to allowing tenants to do their own things through maybe video chats, and you walk them through how to fix something. So instead of you as a property manager sending a maintenance person out there to the property and being in the same presence of this tenant, you're able to do this similarly to how telemedicine has been happening, where you would walk them through how to fix it if it's a small item via a video chat of some sort. So all of those elements is what we really see and what COVID has influenced. And then last but not least, obviously, we're all working from home, and having a cloud-based systems from a property management perspective is allowing you to do all of that from under one umbrella, one system, one platform.
Yeah, that's really well said. No question about that. Damon, data of COVID-19 perspective, CoreLogic, how have things changed, or how have your existing services been able to really help your partners across the U.S.?
Sure. Yeah, and I think too, as to not get too lengthy in my answer here, but we do have a website that's created. We call it COVID-19 on our microsite. So folks can go out to CoreLogic.com landing page and then get our practical solutions. But this really talks a little bit about and thought leadership that we have around it, and can get really specific into that. But I think there's several things, as we continue to expand and as we start looking at new ways that we can support our clients, we really are focusing on several areas. One is the digital home buying solution. With the acquisitions and some partnerships that we've made in that space, we're able to do that. When it comes to that digital home buying, is to you can just do it all from the your computer or your phone. Appraisal management and collateral underwriting. We know that's key. Is much like doing a home inspection, doing the appraisal, being able to do that with the data or data components that we can compile. And Jeff, you had mentioned that earlier. How do we do that with all the data? Looking at what we have historical and present. Then we have our market risk indicators, our digital leasing solutions, our crime risk reports, and portfolio insights and monitoring. And I think the key thing in here, as we talk about COVID, is we have been leaning towards a digital marketplace. I think this just pushes us a little bit faster, quicker into the marketplace. And I think key point of this is that everything that we're doing is going to be data driven, and really looking at the historical to the current points, and really driving that forward for investors and homeowners alike.
That's really well said. And Damon, I'll tell you, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I appreciate your company putting out information free of charge to the real estate investment community. I've often gone to your website to see different trends, even though there's not a ton of data yet. We've certainly been using at RCN Capital to see what you are seeing on a daily basis across the U.S. And Andy, I'm going to give you the final word here. My guess is your technology was built to really speed the operation of the property managers and the investors. And who knew that it would have such an applicable sort of solution for today's environment. Maybe throw out to our customer or our investor base today sort of any things that have even surprised you a little bit.
We've seen people use this technology already in very unique ways, and like some of these examples are not necessarily what the bulk of people are going to do, because it's just every market is different. But we're seeing property managers who maybe have really large, like cleaning fee type deposits, and they actually are guiding the tenants through how to do all of that as part of their moving out, to return as much of the security deposit back as possible, right? So, and they're building in the checklist to clean the oven and do this, and then they can embed a video from their own website and things like that. And so driving that process, or even in California, you have to do something called a pre-inspection, where you basically give the tenants right to cure. And we've come up with a form where, the tenant is basically doing that, virtually without you going there. So I think those types of things would never have thought that you would have needed to even necessarily try that, but that's what's happening right now. And I think, across the board, you've already seen the trends. Like we have a virtual tour solution. We have a ton of our users are actually in, maybe people in the Philippines or in Mexico. They got virtual assistants, right? And so that all those trends have been there already to kind of optimize people's companies. And I think, if anything, you got to take this as an opportunity to let's figure these tools out. Let's get our operations as smooth as we can. Let's get it working so you can be anywhere with it, and you're managing your team from anywhere and working with your tenants from anywhere. And I think you'll be a lot stronger when we come out of this situation. And because I think obviously we will come out of it, but it's going to be a permanent change at some level. Exactly how it's going to be, hard to say. But I think the companies that can learn from this, optimize this, and do their best to improve and still offer great service are going to do well on the backside.
That's really well put, and congratulations on the company that you've built up into this point. And folks, unfortunately, we have reached and actually a little bit past the top of the hour here today on our technology panel. I want to thank what has really been one of the best panels so far. A big, huge thank you to Trevor, Benson, Anas, Damon, and Andy. Really, your expertise in each of your own specific areas was fantastic for our investor base across the U.S. today. And as always, an extra special thank you to Suzanne and Robert from REI Inc. have just done an amazing job of connecting all of the investors across the U.S. through these digital platforms. And also a reminder that REI Inc., on their homepage, there is a digital library. And on this digital library, we have all of the past webinars. You can sit back, relax, and enjoy all the different content that we've been able to cover over the past few weeks. And next week, we've got an extra special panel. It's going to be on build to rent and investing in this COVID era and how we are navigating these uncharted waters. So once again, my name is Jeffrey Tesch from RCN Capital. Thank you for attending today. Have a good afternoon.